In today's episode, we welcome Matthew Gourgeot, who is with Thryv, which is a CRM that serves small businesses and franchisees. And they've also branched into serving franchisors and then the franchisees of those franchisors. Hi, Matt. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, April, and thanks for hosting and inviting me to be on your podcast.
Yeah. So I don't know if you know this, but when I started this business, Ask April Porter, I began my CRM journey as a Thryv customer, and I had the Thryv CRM to start out, and then we grew and needed a couple other things. But I'm really familiar with your product. I love what you guys do, and you focus. Tell us who you mainly focus on as your kind of niche customer.
Well, Thrive was designed for small businesses. So if you look at the small business ecosystem, you've got local independent operators in all of our local towns and cities. And a big share of the small business ecosystem is franchises, is franchisees. So Thrive is used by small businesses, and it's used primarily by local independent businesses. But over the last few years, we've really been growing in the franchise space. And franchisors take our software, install it at the franchisee level. And so the local franchisees that are interacting with the consumers in every town, they're using our software to do that. And so that's how small businesses all over the US, Canada, and Australia use Thrive.
And there's so many cool things about what you're doing. And we're going to get into some of those because I think you really solve a lot of problems for small business owners. I mean, like you were actually worked for a multi-unit franchisee yourself, and then even worked for an advertising agency that supported franchisors and franchisees before you came to Thrive, right?
That's correct. Yeah, I worked for a multi-unit operator of the Gold's Gym franchise. And then I worked for a marketing services advertising company called Haibu, where we sold advertising and marketing to small businesses all over, the U.S. Wasn't just franchises, but local independent businesses too. Before joining Thrive, yes.
Gotcha. So, of course, Thrive, when they decided they wanted to get into the franchising space, I'm sure they looked around and said, "Oh, let's have Matthew do this." Is that about how it went?
Yeah, I'd had experience obviously working for a franchise before, and then within our own company, I joined Thrive in 2015. And the years kind of preceding to when we launched the software business within the company, I had been working with franchises, primarily companies like your listeners would know, Neighborly and some of their brands, but that was selling our advertising and marketing to them. But I just had a knowledge of the franchise space, and so when we decided to build a software business within Thrive, I was tapped on the shoulder to kind of lead that and help the company launch that back in 2019.
And it's interesting because those of us that are in the franchising space, we really know that it is kind of its own ecosystem. I like to say it's a little bit like high school in that you walk into the franchising industry and it's almost like you're in the four walls of unified team spirit, go franchising. And then everybody knows everybody.
Yeah, it's really intimidating, for some of your listeners that maybe just joined like the IFA, or they're just starting their supplier company, or maybe they're a new franchisor that just joined. I know it's intimidating. I remember my first IFA that I went to, just walking into the facility and seeing, these thousands of people, and it seemed like you said, it's like a big high school where everyone had kind of grown up together. They kind of knew each other. Everyone is so excited to see each other, and you're this newbie, and it's kind of intimidating. But I had a couple of people that really took me under their wing, kind of introduced me to a lot of the people in the space and taught me the industry. I was very fortunate in that regard. So that's why I personally try to give back through it. I'm on the supplier advisory board, part of the membership committee, and we launched like a mentoring program as well called 30 Under 30. So there was a lot of really good people to me when I was first starting, but it can be very intimidating because it's this big, massive $billion industry, but there's a few thousand logos in the U.S., and so it is like that big high school, where kind of everyone knows each other.
Yeah, and then it's almost I don't want to use the word clicks because everyone in the franchising industry is truly like great people and willing to help, and it's a really wonderful place to be. But maybe specialties would be the right word, right? Like, so we have the band program, which is like School of Rock franchise industry, and we have, the I don't know what other kinds of clubs you might have at school, but it is kind of like that, where there's all these little like groupings because of the different industries that exist in
Yeah, no,
franchising.
it is, but I think once you can prove to certain people that one, you understand the industry, and then you can actually um, perform and do what you say you're going to do. Once you kind of build that trust with a few of the people, that it is a relationship based kind of industry where if you want to build your business, a lot of it's going to be done through relationships. But sometimes that can be easier though too, as you network and you can kind of grow your business. But I would just say for anyone listening, if you're kind of intimidated, you just experienced your first IFA, it's okay. It's a great industry.
It is a great industry, and you guys definitely make it fun. I mean, I see you at all the conferences, and Amy was rocking the mascot that you guys had at the last one. We did the TikTok dance. I think, I don't know. It's a lot of fun, seeing our good friends all over the franchising industry when we go to the conferences. But let's get back to Thrive, because I really want people to know, whether you're a small business owner, a franchisee, or if you're a franchisor who's looking for a solution for your franchisees in the field, Thrive really has a robust system. And I think it seems to me like you guys built it around gaps that existed in small business, because let's be honest about it, for a long time, to even invest in a CRM was outside the budget of many small business owners. And I mean, if you did get a CRM, it was kind of like one note. But what did you guys see? What were the gaps, and how did you how'd you fill them?
Yeah, so if you look at consumer behavior over the last decade, or just technology in general, it's been changing very rapidly, and I think small businesses have a tough time keeping up. It's just like you set up a system, you set up some tools, and just before you get really good at it, the industry's changed, consumer behaviors change, and it's tough to keep up with like that rate of change. So that's an issue. Plus, as consumers become used to interacting with bigger businesses, and they have these easy frictionless experiences when they shop local with either a franchisee or a small business, they want the same kind of frictionless, easy to find, easy to interact with, easy to pay experience. And so that's really tough. On some platforms it's really tough to do manually or through Excel spreadsheets and stuff like that. So we the ability to equip the business owner with tools they could use was really critical. And then I think one of the biggest things that Thrive solves is that if you look at the entirety of the customer journey, from the time like a lead's looking for that local franchisee online to when they're paying them and then hopefully becoming a repeat customer, there's probably 7 or 8, 10 different tools that you could buy, these point solutions, and kind of paste them together and manage that customer experience from start to finish. And that's what we really find, especially in the franchise space, because most franchise businesses have digitized their operations, more so than a local independent business. Local independent business, a lot of times they're still maybe using pen and paper invoices. They're still, they might be on Excel spreadsheets. They're getting ready to digitize their business, where most of the time franchise is a little bit further along, but they're using 6, 7, 8 different tools at the local level to manage that customer. And that's just really hard to train. It's really hard to scale. And so what Thrive, our platform, does, it allows the franchisor to customize that experience at the local level for their Z's. And then the franchisees can use one platform to interact with leads, interact with current customers, repeat customers, and really manage that customer experience at the local level and do it all the same across every location.
Yeah. Well, that's what I loved when I first started using it. And we just, to be quite honest, it's built for small businesses. We outgrew it, right? But what I loved about it, and what I haven't found honestly since, is truly that all-in-one idea where, okay, you guys have a great, for a small business owner, one of the biggest things that they tell me, the biggest headache, I just did a poll um, in a couple of our groups on Facebook a couple weeks ago and said, what is your number one, like, where do you feel like the biggest void in your knowledge that is holding you back as a business owner? Marketing. Every time. Every time. And you all have made it so easy because you have got that social media planner right there in the CRM, and you even like generate content that they can pull from. If they don't have an image that day, they can pull an image and put it in. I mean, for a small business owner who's running around like a chicken with their head cut off, it couldn't be simpler.
Yeah, Steve Jobs used to say that simple is the ultimate sophistication. And I don't know if you've ever had guests at your house and you've cleaned up your house for hours and they walk in and they say, "Oh, April, the house looks amazing." And they don't know that you worked your butt off, in order to get it to look like that. If you're using our software, it is so simple to use. I mean, the tough thing when you're growing your franchise brand is you're going to sign franchisees that are super tech savvy. You're going to sign some that aren't. You're going to sign some that are good at, making notes in their CRM, some that are good at marketing. Whatever it is, our platform from the front of the customer journey to the end of it is very simple, and we've worked extremely hard. Our product team has worked extremely hard to make it easy to use, and so that's, I think, one of the biggest feedback items that we get from our current users is just one, how good it looks, how from the interface it's just very simple right in front of you, and then how easy it is to use. And then from a marketing perspective, I mean, a lot of people think they can do marketing. It's one of these things where I have a marketing background, a marketing degree, and a lot of people think they can do it. But our you can actually facilitate a lot of the marketing functions in a business in Thryv, whether it's a social media planner, responding to reviews, email and text marketing campaigns, both email blasts and then also automated campaigns. There's a few other marketing functions in there too, but marketing is a huge component of the Thryv platform.
Well, and I do think too in the franchising world, in fact, I again, I'm always trying to be out there talking online or in person, whichever, to franchisors and franchisees. And I had another conversation this morning where there was a franchisee saying, how much marketing, should a franchisor really provide? Do they really provide all the marketing you need, or do I have to provide it? And it's like, there's not necessarily a really great understanding of the fact that both, right? What is the franchisor responsible for? Well, they're responsible for national marketing. And if you're when you know marketing, you know that really equates to brand awareness. Like, you can't count on that driving people through your doors at a local level, because it's not focused on your local unit. You have to supplement it with local marketing. And so I think it's great because it's made it simple for people to be able to do that, and really kind of create a marketing strategy that leverages what the franchisor gives them and helps them remain compliant, but then also gives them the tools that they need to kind of fill it out.
Yeah, when I'm working with a brand, one of the things that creates a lot of anxiety is as you relinquish control to the franchisees, they're running, you've grown this brand your entire adult life, right? Then you franchise it. Now these other people are out there with your logo, your reputation, and you're allowing them to manage the marketing in their local town or city or whatever. You can really, from a compliancy standpoint, or you can just manage that within our platform. You can standardize a lot of the email templates and a lot of the communications that they send out to their current customers, and facilitate that through our program, and you can really manage it in there. And I think the way that we describe it is that Thryv helps the franchisee just run a better business. It really takes like maybe one of your franchisees that's, just say a B minus kind of operator, and makes them a B plus, because it does a lot of the push-ups for them the way that you want the push-ups done if you're the franchisor.
Yeah, and speaking of franchisors, I mean, the system is great for the franchisee on the front end, but on the franchisor back end, I think it's important to note, because many people hear us talk about franchisee and franchisee support all the time and what franchisees need in business and education. But a franchisor can only evaluate how their support is performing and how their support needs to be improved if they're getting data and information. And that's part of what you guys have is on the back end, the franchisor can kind of has their own dashboard and can see what's going on with their units overall, based on how the franchisees are using the platform, right?
Exactly. So we have real-time reporting across our platform. So if you're listening to this and you have like a 50 location brand, just imagine all your 50 franchisees using Thryv to interact with their, end consumer. They're all using it the same way. The data that they're, from their individual Thryvs are rolling up to our product we call Hub by Thryv, which is our franchisor reporting platform. And it provides you data on, leads and people in the CRM, to bookings and appointments, all the way down to estimates, invoices, and the most important thing, payments. You can track the revenue on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And one of our customers that was a relatively established brand didn't, an example of this would be when we met them, they didn't know how their franchisees were doing financially until the end of the month when they turned in for their royalty reporting and whatnot. They didn't have like a real-time tracker there. And we were able to provide them. So now that every franchisee was issuing invoices and taking payment through our system, in real time, they knew how every single franchisee was doing, at least from a top line revenue standpoint at any given time. And so it really provided them a lot of eyes into, the performance instead of just sitting around hoping that everyone did well and then just seeing the numbers at the end of the month.
Yeah. Well, and for any franchisors listening, here's a strategic tip from what we do. With that kind of data, if you're going through and looking every day, okay, how is everyone doing? Figure out who on day, 7 is way behind the pack. Reach out to them. Just even through like a quick email or a text, say like, "Hey, it seems like it's a bit of a slow month. You want to jump on a call? What's going on? How can we help you?" Sometimes what's happening in a franchisee's life or business isn't necessarily bad business. It's something has happened in their lives that have pulled them away, maybe, or their attention away from their business. And just purely having someone reach out and say, "We see you and we care," can be the difference maker for that franchisee. And you can't do that if you don't have access to this kind of data.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I would even say, when you look at every franchisor's definition of success for their franchisee is a little different. But let's just say you were looking at revenue and you stack ranked, your 50 franchisees and, from 1 to 50, you would say, okay, they make they earned in the month of August this amount of revenue. Well, what actually generated that revenue? What was it? And you can actually look in our system and see, okay, well, my top 10 sent this many email campaigns or sent this many promotions or used this email template that our VP of marketing created, and the call to action, um, said this, and the click-through rates were here, and these customers ended up purchasing. And we're like, okay, well, these bottom 10 or these bottom 20 or these bottom 25, you need to mirror what they're doing. And it's, and I think a lot of times in a franchise system, if you can show that versus just the top down, the franchisor kind of saying what you should or shouldn't do, if you can really show them some data and it actually come from one of their peers in the system, it's a lot more effective, to really bring those people that are maybe your C and D performers kind of at the bottom of the rankings up to where the A and B players are.
Right. And when franchisees win, franchisors win. It's pretty simple.
100%. I mean, that's the whole like bank shot and pull, it's the law of indirect effort. If you want, more money, more royalties, more, pouring in, you got to get those franchisees thriving, no pun intended. We say that all the time. If you want thriving franchisees, come work with us. But yeah, that's it. I mean, the best franchisors that I've met, I work with so many and have met so many, like the really, really good ones, I think are, laser focused on the end consumer. Like what's that experience like on a local level, and just wake up and go to sleep thinking about their franchisees. Like, how can we get them better? And that a lot of that can be facilitated through technology.
Oh yeah, and I mean technology. I'm sure you all would agree. We are in a very interesting shift in technology right now. With the age of AI being introduced, and things over the technological landscape are going to change dramatically in the next few years, not just for business owners, I mean, for everyone, consumers and everything. But business owners are going to have those that are still using paper invoices. You're not going to be able to keep doing it. It's just aging out.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's not that they can't use it. It's just that it's going to be incredibly tough to have a really, you know, good growing business if you're not leveraging technology. I mean, if you really look at the relationship that people have with technology, especially business owners, you can usually predict the success that they're going to have, moving forward. And I just think as a franchisor, if you're not just really focused on that, there's some bad stuff that's in the future for you. I mean, if you just even look at, you know, current franchisees, if there's any turnover at the local level, well, if a lot of their data and a lot of the information that they have is not in the cloud, it's going to be really tough for you to consolidate, sell their location, whatever it might be. So, from start to finish in a franchise operation, whether it's on the franchise side or the core consumer side, you may not be the most tech savvy person in the world as a franchisor, but your franchise brand better be. That's what the message I share with our current
It's so
clients.
interesting you say that, because we, of course, had a lot of success in our brand when I was a franchisee. And one of the things that I did was I got into our CRM and I found out that it had all these bells and whistles that were there, but we hadn't been trained to use or given really a purpose for using it. But when I saw them, I'm like, oh, I could do this with that. I could do this with that. So I dove in and I was using technology in a way that other franchisees weren't. And then people were coming to me saying, like, what are you doing differently? What's going on? And I'm like, well, I have this whole follow-up sequence that nurtures my customers after they bought a membership, to keep them engaged until they renew or they buy more products or whatever. And they're like, how do I mean, our franchisor wasn't doing it at the time. I just went in and found it and said, oh, well, this is going to make my life easier. So I think it's a really interesting point, or thought process. I haven't really considered it before, that the franchisees who are at the top are using more technology and using it more effectively in their businesses. Makes total sense.
Yeah, in software with software companies, they call that shelfware. When you have the software but you don't use it, it's shelfware. And so we really like franchisees like you that dig in and use the platform to its extent, to the fullest extent. And I think Thryv does a really good job partnering with the franchisor's team to do the initial rollout and then the initial training and then the ongoing training. It's just the nature of franchising. Most franchisors only have 3 to 5 employees, at the corporate level. It's really tough once to roll out a new system, roll out any kind of new technology, train the franchisees adequately, and then to make sure and follow up that they're continuously in the systems and using it. I mean, you've only got 3 to 5 people. It's really hard to do that. So you need to find a supplier like Thryv or some of our other supplier friends that can really support not only you but your franchisees, because they're the ones in it daily running the business.
And I do think that suppliers kind of get the short end of the stick in franchising. There's so much focus on, I mean, in fact, we don't even have the word franchise in our title, right? There's the franchisor, there's a franchisee, and then there's the suppliers over here. And the, not only franchisors that leverage technology, but franchisors that really leverage the supplier community, I think, are the ones who are moving the fastest towards their ultimate goals, because they understand the value of having experts on your team, and siloing some of those things into the hands of people who can knock it out of the park, versus just trying to limp along getting by if you don't quite have enough experience in a particular area.
Yeah, in some professions you have to be certified, in order to do your profession or to service a certain person or to maybe do a surgery on. There's no certification to sell software to franchises. I mean, and you look around and, I think a lot of brands are using companies that really don't understand the space or don't really understand the industry. And at one time, I'm not acting like I'm a complete expert, but at one time I didn't either. But it took, our company has taken the time to really understand it. I think learn what's the best way to support a Zor and a Z, and that relationship there. And so, yes, I mean, I think that, one of the things is as an industry in general, it's not like there's this directory or whatnot when you're a franchisor of like where I need to go to buy software from, a certified, franchise marketing company or franchise software company. There's a few other groups. We're part of the Franchise Supplier Network now, FSN, that I believe is trying to do something like that, where you can be in this emerging Zor and kind of have this marketplace to go where, these companies do work with franchises. And but there's a ton of companies out there that really don't understand the space that are working with franchises. And I think at some point you graduate out of that and you really need to work with someone that understands the industry.
Oh, I agree. I could not agree more. I had someone today that I network with locally. Wonderful, wonderful guy, and he runs a marketing company. He's like, I mean, I could work with franchisees, and I'm like, you could, yes, of course you could, but people outside the industry just really, it's a long learning curve, probably like a good 6 month learning curve of getting really involved in the industry to really understand all the moving parts and the relationships and the legal. There's so many regulatory and legal things that you have to be aware of, and that what's in a franchise agreement, and what's the relationship between a franchisee and franchisor in order to serve this industry at the top level. And so being a supplier who does focus on the franchising industry is immensely invaluable to a franchisor.
Yeah, it does. It does. It takes a while to learn. I mean, if you came to a few of our first sales calls or meetings a few years ago, the franchises, I would, and if we had recorded those, I'd be embarrassed to go in and watch them. I mean, just from your point of understanding, the FDD, to understanding the legal ramifications if you do this, that, or the other. Um, but we learn those, and you do learn them over time, and then you understand how to support the brand. And so, yeah, I think it's just an important thing to call out, and an important thing for a franchisor to make sure that their supplier, their vendor network is the right fit, and can scale with them as they grow. And it's just really important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I'd like to see more suppliers actually teaching content at our conferences, because I think that suppliers could be leveraged for their expertise more effectively, I would say.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think is going to change in the industry moving forward, because if what I was learning the space, you talk about learning the space, a lot of things that I would do is I would go onto YouTube and I'd look at IFA 2020 or 2016, and I'd watch a panel, and a lot of times the same material has been covered for the last 6-7 years. A lot of times it's the same panelists, the same 3 or 4 people every single time, same companies. And a lot of people make the rounds around the shows, and they have this same panel over and over and over again. And I don't know how effective that is. I think there's some newer things that are kind of cropping up, and there's some new ways to kind of get content out there. But I do think there's a lot of really smart suppliers that could train on a certain topic at some of these events. We're used mainly in the space to sponsor the event and then have a booth and hope people show up. But I think in the future, hopefully, the suppliers will be used for more educational opportunities.
Yeah, I agree. And I get it, like it can be overwhelming for a franchisor who's just starting out to have all these people pitching them their services, right? And I think that's what a lot of conferences are fearful of, is they don't want people up there just pitching services. I think we've gotten to a day and age, though, where so many of the suppliers truly, truly just want to give good, valuable content that is helpful to people, that they can take away something, apply it in their business, and have success with that one thing. And it's altruistic, right? It's like we all, again, going back, yes, when franchisees win, franchisors win. But when the industry wins, suppliers win too. Like, we're all in this together. as an industry. So I hope.
It's a three-pronged stool or whatever, whatever you call it, where I mean it's franchisors, franchisees, and suppliers. And I think there's ample opportunity. I mean, I think, like, for instance, with your company or our company, and there's a lot of my great supplier friends out there, that we understand that, at certain conferences, just being on stage and educating on a topic provides a lot of awareness and for your company. And you don't need to be up there, pitching your widget, or how you're great and all that stuff. But you know the exposure to be able to coach on a certain topic, I think, is great, because a lot of times, some of the people on stage, from a franchisor or franchisee standpoint, have the experience in the franchising side of the business, but whether they're talking about marketing, or they're talking about consumer behavior, or some of these things that really impact the brand, there's educational opportunities for a supplier to come in and probably provide a little bit better content on not only just what's happened over the last 6 months to a year, but what's really happened, what's going to happen the next year, 2 or 3, because I think they have a better pulse on what's happening. They're ear to the ground, and they understand where the consumer is going to be in the future. So, these conferences that have people presenting both as a franchisor, franchisee, and supplier, I think have probably some of the better content.
I agree. And I also think suppliers are hearing things from the franchisors, or excuse me, suppliers are hearing things from franchisees that the franchisees are not sharing with the franchisors. And so there's a little bit, well, I think in my profession, at least, there's a lot more information I'm getting from the franchisees that are impacting their performance and that are impacting the relationship with the franchisor, that the franchisor is completely unaware of. And just having that knowledge and being made aware of that may impact the way that they make decisions. It may impact some of the next things that they implement. They may be planning to do something and may realize, wow, we need to slow that down and focus over here. And I hear from suppliers all the time, oh yeah, our clients are telling us they're struggling with that too. And I'm like, it's interesting because obviously they're going to talk to me about it because I'm here as like their coach, their strategist, their consultant. But it's interesting when I hear that from the payroll company, and when I hear that from the CRM company, and when I hear that from who else told me that recently? Anyway, it doesn't matter. I hear it all the time. So I think that's another way that we could be helpful to the whole system.
Yeah, and there's, we're talking about, I'm on the IFA Supplier Advisory Board, and we're, discussing how to make some of the conferences better. And the IFA is great. I mean, they're attending our board meetings, and they're asking, how can we make it better for you guys? So I think everyone understands that, these conferences need to be beneficial, not only just for the franchisor, but for franchisees and especially suppliers. I mean, we foot the bill for a lot of them, from a sponsorship standpoint. So I think that's going to get better in the near future, based on what I'm privy to.
That's exciting. That's really exciting. All right. Well, Matt, thank you so much for being here today. Now, all of you are invited to go do a demo of Thryv, right? I mean, everybody should check it out.
I agree. I agree. Yes.
Yeah, so we're gonna put a link in the show notes that you can click on. You can set up a demo. You can talk to Matt's team and really learn how this could be the right tool for either your small business or your franchise if you're a franchisor, or if you're a franchisee whose franchisor doesn't provide the CRM. They're actually out there. There are right now franchises that are missing some of these technological tools. If you're a franchisee listening in that situation, one, you could talk to Thryv yourself, assuming it's not in violation of your franchise agreement. But two, introduce that Thryv to your franchisor so that you can help your whole brand move forward. We're going to put those links in the show notes. Thanks again, Matt. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, April. I appreciate the invite on the podcast, and everything you just mentioned right there. That's exactly how we meet Zors. A lot of times, the franchisee in a local market gets to know us, and they're like, "Hey, this is great. We should use this, as a brand." And then they introduce us to the corporate team. But yeah, go to our website, go to the link that's in April's notes, and We have a whole team waiting to meet with you, and we'd love to see if we can help your brand.